Hello, salam, shalom, namaste, sasrikal, aloha, hola, ciao, bonjour, buna, привет, mabuhay, and jean dobre. I'm so happy um, to be doing today's episode because we have a very cool returning guest with us, and that is Albert Bramante. Did I get your last name
Yes,
right?
you did. Yes, you did.
Sometimes I get the emphasis like mixed up in my mind.
Hmm.
But yay! Welcome back, Albert. I'm so happy you're back with us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for having me.
Yes. And Albert, before we go any further, can you please tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So, for those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Dr. Albert Bramante. I'm a talent agent in the United States, in the New York area, and I've also worked in the area of performance mindset. So I help work with a lot of creatives, a lot of actors, and those that are like pursuing any type of performative work. That could be a coach, that could be a speaker, that could be even a podcast host, someone that's always has to perform, or in a sense perform a role.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That is such a important role that you play in the lives of people like us because I count as, like I'm one of your people. Ah, gosh. And actually, in our last episode, we focused a lot on performance mindset. You shared with us like so many excellent tips and practical tools and advice and insights on how to improve our performance mindset. We
Hmm.
talked about that in the context of things like dealing with self-sabotage and low self-esteem and building up our conscientiousness and so forth. And there's just so much more for
Hmm.
us to dig into that I'm so excited for. And actually, one of the things that you had mentioned that you have been guiding your people with regards to, and I thought this would be like a really awesome thing for us to talk about today, is step-by-step ways creators can use AI for clarity, productivity, and empowerment. Uh,
Hmm.
Tell me more about like what's going on with AI in your work? What are some of the challenges that you're
Sure.
seeing?
Well, our world was disrupted in, I would say, December 2022 when ChatGPT was formed. Now, the idea of artificial intelligence has been around for decades, even prior to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
If any of you own the Siri or an Alexa, that's exactly what GPT runs on, the AI,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. If you've watched Netflix, if you're a Netflix watcher, you'll often notice when you finish watching a series or a movie, it'll say, based on these selections, here's your recommendations. Well, that's AI. And even the algorithms on social media are operated through AI. And so it's been around in our lives for many, many, our if you drive a car, GPS,
Yeah.
that's artificial intelligence. So, this is nothing really new, but it's something that became, exploded in the past like 3 years or so. And you have multiple corporations putting in billions of dollars. Almost every nation in the world is involved in this, artificial intelligence community. Now, when I had first, proposed this a while back, I was using mainly ChatGPT,
Mm.
which is still the common, but one tool that I really started to find useful too, actually, is Claude
Mm.
and Gemini. Now
Mhm.
ChatGPT is run by OpenAI, Claude is run by Anthropic, and Gemini is Google's.
Yeah.
AI space. There's all I know. X has has Grok, and then there's also Perplexity, which I'll get into, which is also another good. Perplexity is another good one too. But the way I do, the way I've always looked at AI is it should never replace you. It
Mm.
should only amplify you.
Yeah.
So, or at least assist you, not take over.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take over your life. It shouldn't take over anything that you do. Still should have you in it. And so, and there's when you type an instruction into any type of AI use, it's called prompting.
Yeah.
Now, it's really important when I work with people and this is something I had to learn too. If you give it a weak prompt or a mediocre prompt, you're going to get what we call AI slop, which is we're seeing, if any of you are on social media, you see this every day. Now flooding the feeds, which like, okay, I can tell this is AI generated because it's so formulaic and almost soulless, boring.
Yeah.
But if for like, let's say, for example, I wanted to put in a post on LinkedIn and I said, write me a post about performance mindset. Well, it's going to give me a very generic, clean, good sounding, professionally sounding, but there'll be no substance to it. It'll just be like, okay, this is, robotic. Like, this is boring.
Yeah.
However, if I give it context, the important thing is like, one of the things that I often that I do myself greatly is you have to train the models.
Mm.
Train the models, whether you're going to use ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, or a combination. It's important to train the models, on your voice
Uh-huh.
and on your brand. So you would have to go in and say who you are. So if I was going to say write a performance mindset article, I would put, I'm a talent agent with 22 years of experience. I work with, early to mid-career actors in this, demographic, which is like 25 to 45, and that are struggling with, overcoming self-doubt and imposter syndrome. And I might even say, give me a, step by, three things that they can do today. I'm very specific. Now, I'm going to get a better output if I did that rather than I just said, write me an article about performance mindset. Just
Yeah.
like if you're going to write an article about happiness, you would say, you wouldn't say just write me an article about happiness because then you're going to get, some overused slogans that sound very corporate and very, easily forgotten because it's boring.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, you could say, I host Making Change Fun and Easy podcast. This is what we serve. I'm thinking about doing a topic in this issue, on this topic. And you might even feed it a couple scripts of your previous episodes.
Mm.
And then you would say, okay, give me some ideas for future topics or future guests. Here are the guests I've had in the past. So the more context that you can give AI, the better of a response you're going to get. And that's why there's that famous saying, you hear this a lot with AI trainings, is garbage in, garbage out. If you
Yeah.
give it garbage in, you're going to get garbage out.
Yeah.
And even when you get to some really stuff, because you will find, at least, I found most people I talk to, the more context you get, the more mind-blowing it's going to seem like, wow, this is great. However, I would always say resist the temptation of just stopping there. And that's where a lot of people mistake, oh, this is great, I'm going to cut base now into social media. And then you post and it's like, well, I'm not getting any engagement. Well, yeah, because it's AI. It's not you. So what I often say when I work with creatives or anybody is you should come up with a skeleton of an idea.
Hmm.
What do you want to create? If you're creating an article, if you're creating, social media post, if you're creating a website or a flyer or whatever it is you're trying to create or a podcast episode, you should already have a skeleton of what you want. And that should come from your own brain.
Yeah.
And then you would plug that into the AI and it would help you fix things up. And then you still should come back and say, okay, well, I like this, I like that, and then put your own spin on it. Add your own stories, add your own experience. The one thing that AI doesn't know is your stories. It
Mm,
doesn't have your personality.
yeah.
And that's where a lot of, and that's where a lot of AI falls flat because AI in itself is not necessarily creative. You are, humans are,
Mm,
we are. But we need to inject that into the text that it gives us. So, and no matter how, you could get the best prompts, you could have the best, instructions, and even have the best AI model. It's still not going to replace the human touch and never will. And yes, this model, and the thing about it, which I think is interesting, is AI is developing at a very fast rate.
yeah.
There's new tools that are coming out daily. There's new techniques that are coming out daily. These models are being improved daily. That who knows in even 2 months from now, we could be having a whole different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. That is such a, the rate. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about, some challenges related with AI, or that AI is creating society at large. And one of the things they were talking about is that the rate at which the AI systems are improving is basically exponential. And they have picked up so much speed. It's like nothing we have seen in human history before. And the so the power that they have, like the scope of what they can do, the different kinds of problems that they can solve, is just getting exponentially better and better and better and better, in terms of, like, however it is that those metrics are being measured. And it's like creating serious, like, questions for people in terms of, like, what is our value as humans then, and as workers in various fields, when, here is this machine that's able to do everything faster and in many
Mm-hmm.
ways, like, better, and this and that. And so I'm so glad that, you spoke right off the bat about the value that we have. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode. Hope you're getting value out of it. For your information, this episode has been sponsored by the Happiness 101 program. Are you a change maker, coach, trainer, or healer? Are chains of fear holding you back from making the impact and income you desire? Using a unique combination of positive psychology and the spiritual wisdom of our most effective change makers, the Happiness 101 program helps you break through your limiting beliefs and manifest the abundance and success you desire with fun and ease. Interested? Book a free Happiness 101 exploration call with me, your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Just use my online calendar link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
Absolutely, and that's one thing we'll never forget. Like, I'm not really concerned, and this could be, I could be mistaken, but I'm not entirely concerned about AI taking everyone's jobs away. However, what I will say is that, especially if you're going into the career force, that you really need to have skills in AI, if you want to be, successful, have a successful job.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I mean, it's just like, and it's here to stay. I mean, I remember, this is going to age me a bit, but I remember when the internet came out, or was discovered in the 90s.
Yeah.
And everyone was worried about the internet, like, that it's going to, end the world and that's crazy. And we came out fine. Yeah, it had its problems, but it definitely, and I feel the same way it's going to happen with AI. We're going to be fine. However, it's important to remember to be connected. And the one thing that I will say, and this is one of the things that does concern me, is the idea that we're turning to early society, or the young, generation like Gen Z and under, are turning to chatbots as therapy or companionships.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing a rise of these AI, girlfriends or AI partners, and it's like that is something concerning because it's not real. It's not a real person,
Yeah.
and while these chatbots are getting really good at simulating, and I made that a key word. It's simulating communication.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so easy for us to lose perspective on that. I mean, there's so much like evidence now that even adults, like grown, perfectly healthy, happy adults, you start engaging with these bots in that kind of context where you're like, oh, building a relationship with them and so forth. And you lose perspective. And it's like even more challenging for our young people to maintain perspective and like, maintain their sanity and just mental health. So,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, because the one thing about the way that the default, at least the default models, when I say default by, unless you prompt it, these large language models, which is what ChatGPT and Claude falls under, or Gemini, are highly agreeable. And they will kind of tell you everything, in essence, what you want to hear.
yeah,
And that may not necessarily be true. And that's what there's what we call hallucinations in the world of AI, which is, yeah, it sounds confident, but it's faulty information.
yeah,
And this is why, again, you need to verify the outputs, but at the same time, reach out. If you're feeling lonely, reach out to a human being, not a bot.
yeah. Yeah, it makes me think about like sometimes it just feels easier to go to the bot because I remember in the days when I was, traumatized and I had a lot of social challenges going on. I mean, I had like serious fear of actually opening up to a human being because it was one of the impacts of the trauma that I was dealing with that I
Hmm.
had a lot of trust issues and I was just afraid to trust other people. And I was like, if I, especially in terms of like letting somebody see my weaknesses or my vulnerabilities, because I was just so afraid that people were going to take advantage of that to hurt me, And so, I mean, I remember like in those days, it was much easier for me to not have to face humans. So like, thankfully in those days there were no AI bots. I don't know what would have happened to me if I had gone down that hole, if I had the capacity, because they
Hmm.
were there. So like what I had started doing was like writing. And so now I was like, I was of course journaling, but I was also writing a lot of emails. Mostly, thankfully, again, for me, like it was to like people that I actually knew. But there were like one or two close calls where I connected with some people I didn't know in real life on like these online message boards kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but then, like for me, my fear was always so great that like when I started to feel like, oh, I'm like really connecting with this person, and now they're starting to ask me questions that are like going below the surface of, like just general interactions, I would actually cut things off because I was so afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in that way, my fear sort of protected me, but I
Yeah.
could totally see the appeal. Like with an AI bot, I wouldn't have to feel that fear. And so then I could totally imagine myself totally going into like building out that relationship with the AI bot. And I mean, where might that lead me in terms of negative consequences for my mental health, for my real life relationships, for my ability to actually learn what I needed to learn to have more healthy, happy real life relationships?
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. I mean, and loneliness, especially when you're going through something, it's hard to maintain connections because not everyone's going to understand that. And then also, it's hard to sometimes open up to people, to open up and talking to people, you know, especially when you're at a most vulnerable moment or most vulnerable thought. And yes, online which what was similar to chat rooms that was back, in the late 90s. Those were very popular. And but what was happening was even like when people would meet in real life, because like whether if they dated, like maybe they had a chat room, back and forth, companionship or pen pal, and then met in person. A lot of times, what was happening was there was a mismatch
Mm,
of a person's online persona and who they were.
yeah.
And that's why, like, a lot of times I've seen, I've heard this so many times where people would meet online, after they meet in person and not click
Yeah.
because we're putting our best foot forward. We can be anybody who we want, behind the keyboard.
Right.
And so, and that's also, somewhat what we call synthetic intimacy because it's not real. I can be in a chat room pretending I'm, someone from, England or someone from this, and I'm
Yeah.
not. That's not who I am. So, and the same thing goes with like AI. It becomes easy. So the one thing that happens, and this is what I think fundamentally what happens why we go down that rabbit hole, is when we find someone or something, in this case something, that understands us completely, or at
Mm,
least gives us the illusion that they understand us completely,
uh,
we're gonna open up, you know, like crazy. That's why, like, even before, if, like, take technology out of the side, why do people get involved in relationships sometimes that are very toxic? Because
um,
they need to feel understood, and the toxic person may give them the illusion of being understood,
yeah.
and so that will lead to, again, us falling down the rabbit hole of, well, this chatbot knows who I am. It understands me. It praises me.
Yeah.
It tells me what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And, all of this stuff is dangerous because, again, it's not real. And, who knows if we, if any of these AI companies can go out of business
Yeah.
and it could be shut down at any time,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? When this happens. And the same thing with like people who are constantly online or doing everything online. What happens if there's a power grid failure and we're, going to be locked out of the internet for a month or longer? How are you going to handle it? Now, I remember a time when that was reality. We didn't have to worry about that because that was, the internet was a luxury.
Yeah.
Now, it becomes part of it. So I kind of feel like with social media and as well as this AI dependence, overly dependence, is going to cause us to be more isolated
Yeah.
from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about like, just the again, this was like something I was listening to on another show, and they were like talking about, and I had not even thought about this until I heard them say this, but they were like, you know, already because of social media, um, and the young people who have grown up with social media, their communication patterns have changed.
Mhm.
How they communicate has changed. What they're able to communicate has changed, because like depending on how the medium you're communicating through, it puts certain constraints on what you're able to say, how you're able to say it, when you're able to say, right? And so if you get so used to just communicating through one medium, like literally that constrains your abilities. So like when you get placed in a different situation, now you don't have that phone with you, or don't have that
Mhm.
social media platform through which you can interact. And now you're in front of a person, like real life moment. It's like you literally may not have the skills or the know-how of how to deal with them. Like one example of that, the context in which they were talking about is dealing with conflict.
Mhm.
Because, like when you're online, people deal with conflict in a very different way. Like a lot of people will say things that they would never say to another person in real life.
Mhm.
So people can be a lot more angry, they can be a lot more direct and hurtful in their language, but also there's this apparently, like in terms of like online culture, there's this tendency to be like if you see like a problematic post, one of the things you're going to do is report it, like
Mhm.
so like let's say on a Facebook group, somebody sees a problematic post, so then you're going to report it to the whoever the admin of the group is, maybe to Facebook itself. And r- you may not actually engage with the person who made the post to be like, hey, why do I have a problem with it? And, like try to talk through the problem. It becomes the whole process of how you deal with something that you have a problem with becomes a lot less personal, and like it's going through these layers of technology mediating
Mhm.
stuff for you. So now when you are in a real life situation where you're in conflict with a person, and those tools are not there, those methods of making reports, and etc., like you just don't have those options. And like people literally don't know how to talk through and work through conflict in real life.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing too, because it's easy. One of the skills that we're I think becoming more and more difficult is the fear of addressing conflict or confrontation. And I don't mean that confrontation being aggressive, but even as healthy confrontation, it's because it's easy to hide behind a keyboard and the screen, or in the screen name. I mean, because that was what it was back in the chat room days. You had a screen name, which could be absolutely no anything who you are, and
Yeah.
so it's much easier to be braver than to actually do things, and that's why even with a lot of the younger populations, you'll see some of them that are really so expressive online, but yet when you talk to them in person, they're very socially awkward, somewhat timid and even socially inept because they don't have those skills to communicate one on one.
Yeah.
And it becomes a crutch. And our cell phones, for instance, are one of the most addictive devices that we've ever had. And I would even argue that that's more addictive than drugs, is their cell phone and technology in general, because it's like we're focused on this, this little device right here is like everything. Our lives are on it. And you see people when they can't find their phone, they're 100% distressed and losing their mind
Yeah.
because their life is on it. When
Yeah.
in reality, I remember phones were just, you know, where you just call people on if you need to get a hold of somebody.
So, like thinking about how all these issues connect to like performance, I mean, too much dependency on AI, like as somebody who has to be sort of, like now I've even started in the last year and a half, I've been hearing also a lot about AI avatars, or maybe there's like a different uh, word that is being used, but I think avatars is one of
I
the,
I, I believe that's
like
the
so
yeah.
it's like, oh no, you don't even need to get on video yourself. Now you can just create an avatar, and it's like this character, AI generated character, and that represents you. So it speaks for you, it acts for you. And in when these things like first came out, it was pretty obvious that they were like fake characters, they were not real people. But now they're like making these hyper realistic avatars. So it's like they look so real, they sound so real that like it could very easily fool people into thinking that it is a real person, right? And so like again, like with this, I'm thinking like maybe that could become like another way in which people could get over. I mean, I'm sure there's some scenarios and circumstances in which having that kind of avatar do stuff for you online would be good and helpful. But I can also see a lot of people using that as a crutch, as an alternative, even when
Hmm.
it might not be ideal, when it might not be in their best interest,
Hmm.
but just because it feels safer not to put your own self out there.
Absolutely. And um I probably out of all the AI uses, I probably shy the most away from that to cloning, simply because I've always felt, and because I've tried it myself, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this somewhat looks like me and someone sounds like me, but anyone who knows me knows that that wouldn't be me. Like that wouldn't be me. Now, again, to a new audience, maybe they wouldn't know, but it what I'm concerned about, for because I work as I represent actors, and the one thing I'm worried about with synthetic performers like that is someone doing your face and image and doing it on something that's totally like against your values, that's illegal or moral.
Mm,
And it's almost going to be hard to then prove and say that wasn't me. So that worries me. And also, because I have to protect an actor's bottom line payment.
yeah,
So it's going to be very cheaper to create an AI clone. I don't have to pay the actor anymore.
yeah.
And that's where it's going to have to get really tricky. In New York, for instance, where I'm based, the Screen Actors Guild now is fining any production company that uses an AI avatar, if it's based on a real person, $1,000 for use it. Which I think, okay, that's a first step. But the issue that I'm concerned about is once that genie is released, we're not going to be able to put a lid back on it,
Yeah.
and it's going to get out of control with deepfakes and that's where it worries me. So I'm more about when I say you use it as a brainstorming partner, not
Yeah.
again as a replacement.
Yeah.
Um, like now we're starting to see like AIs can do tasks for people. They call it like agents or agentic AI. I'm not too, my personal opinion, I'm not comfortable with that. Like I wouldn't mind like an AI drafting social media posts. I don't want AI posting to my social medias without me knowing because I don't, I want to curate every piece of content I'm putting out there to make sure that it's, who I am and it's really reflecting my brand,
Yeah.
not something that, is going to not sound like me and spam people
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, because it's like even if AI can do something, doesn't mean that it's good for us to
Hmm.
let it do it, or for us to just sort of blindly just go, oh, just keep giving up things that we do that we love to AI, because
Yeah.
like I keep coming back to thinking about like what's the point and purpose of our lives? What gives our lives meaning? And there's so much work that we do, especially those of us who are creative in the creative field, who are,
Hmm.
like doing this kind of work where like I know for me as a coach, as a podcaster, um, uh, like there's a purpose. Like I'm trying to help people, but also help myself in so many ways. Like when I help people, when I connect with people, it also helps me in so many ways, right? And so the more things that might come in between that, or um, even if it allows me to be more quote unquote productive,
Hmm.
it's not like, for me, it's not worth it because it's not in alignment with my sense of life purpose and meaning and what gives me and my life value, you know? And so it's sort of like, yeah, that's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And that's going to come with, really you doing things that you genuinely love. And that's where, like, if you want to truly give value, the content that you put out there has to come from your heart. Not now. Again, you can certainly use, and I will definitely no problem, saying with confidence that AI can really help you in a great deal with research, with automation of some of the repetitive stuff, and or even just to help you write better scripts, like whether it's videos, or whether it's courses, or whether it's books. But at the same time, it's not going to replace you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where that balance comes in. So it's like, how can, when I work again with creatives, it's, well, how do you maintain your voice? So
Mm.
you have your own stories, you have your own memories, you have your own experiences. That will never change, and that should never change. So, I can have it write something for me. Or what I tend to do is, if I'm sending out, a document, I may write it out initially the way I want to say it.
Yeah.
And then I may feed into the AI and say, okay, make this better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And keep the message, the meaning of the message
Yeah.
intact. But if maybe there's a better way to say this,
Yeah.
and that I felt has been immensely, like game changer.
Yeah.
So, um, and one tip that that I kind of leave to the listeners here is anytime you do a prompt in, what you should do at the end of every prompt, add this sentence, ask me any questions you have.
Mm.
Because the one thing again is when you put a prompt in, AI is going to just, because it's a people pleasing thing, wants
Yeah.
to please you, it's going to put out content. But if you say, ask me any questions, well, now it's going to ask you, a series of questions that about what you're looking for. When you answer those, you're going to get a better piece of output.
Mm.
Something that's like, again, somewhat usable. Again, one thing I would really recommend not to do is to cut and paste anything and use as is, because that's not, again, it's not you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It makes me think also about like this was a like again the this other show that I was listening to with regards to AI stuff. They were saying talking about the difference between how China is using AI versus the US. And they
Hmm.
were saying in China, actually the AI is being used more like a tool. So it's sort of like being integrated into different processes and systems where it's being used for very specific tasks that, it's like, how do we make
Hmm.
this more efficient? Or, well, here's something that is very mundane and boring for a human to do. So let's make AI do that part, so they're using it as a tool to fill in specific tasks
Hmm.
and create specific outputs. They're not, whereas in America, there's this like, I mean, there are some tools and so forth that are being created, but it's sort of also there's this larger attempt to sort of have AI be like a general force where it can do anything and everything and like so it's like not just helping you with this one little task or that particular thing, but it also wants to be your friend and your therapist and
Yeah.
all of that. So it's like where's the containment? Where are the boundaries in terms of what place AI has in your life? And in America, it's like the people are sort of not really you know the American approach is not encouraging people to put strong boundaries around what AI should do in our lives and what role it should have in our lives, not just what it could potentially do.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point you just made. And where boundaries have to come in, and this is very strong. I mean, that's very important to do. And this is why, again, it should be used as a thinking partner, and that's it. It should not be used as a therapist. It should not be used as a companion at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Eh,
And it doesn't have to be. It's like it's like if we allow that to become like a common thing in our culture, it's because we have made that choice to let it happen. It doesn't have to be that way.
right. Exactly. It does not have to be that way. And this is why we really need human connection and human, companionship. That'll never go away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, especially like also coming back to ideas of performance mindset that you specialize in helping people with, if you're talking about something like imposter syndrome and overcoming self-sabotage, like we did last time, if you are overly dependent on AI, I mean, come on, you're like literally signing up to create these problems for yourself.
Absolutely. And, because then you're going to start losing like your concept of who you are.
Yeah. And your confidence in your own value and your own worth and your own sense of like, what am I good at? You know.
Yeah.
So, wow. Thank you so much for all of those amazing insights and that frame of, using AI as this in these various ways where it's like a tool, it doesn't replace us. I just love that so much. Do you have anything else to share on this? Um, like particularly in the context of step-by-step ways that creators can use AI?
Well, again, remember, the important thing is to give it context.
Yeah.
So, when you're prompting, always, say what you want it to do,
Yeah.
and be explicit, because that's another mistake a lot of people make when they get generic information. What exactly are you looking for?
Mm,
And give it context. If you wanted to write, if you're looking to write you a sales letter, so write me a sales letter, and you can emulate people as that are things. Another thing you could do is, let's say you like a piece of writing or a piece or a sales letter. Give the AI a couple copies of already successful sales letters.
mm,
And then what you say is, okay, here's a product I'm selling, here's a service coaching program I'm service. Write like this in this style, promoting my service. The one thing that AI is exceptional at is emulating and copying styles.
mm.
So if I wanted, again, if I'm right, like let's say I'm launching a coaching program, so
Yeah.
I may look at some of the successful people in my industry that are coaching. I look at their websites, I look at their offers, and I copy their offers into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and say, okay, this is a product I'm offering, this is a service I'm offering.
Yeah.
Please take the framework that they're using and write my sales letter in that, you know,
Mm,
tone and format.
yeah.
So it's important that when you're, when you're going step by step here, take your time.
Mm.
Even if it takes you a couple of hours to get the results you want, take your time with it.
Uh,
Don't rush in it. Because it's tempting to say, okay, I typed it, I got something back, I'm done.
yeah.
No, take your time with it and don't be afraid to go back and forth. I have like sometimes I'll be like, that's not what I'm looking for. This area needs to work, and this area is too generic. Please, give me a couple other,
Yeah.
alternatives to that. So feel free to workshop with what you have. But the important thing is, like, when you're coming with something creative, you want to already have something in place.
Yeah.
A skeleton or a concept,
Yeah.
because that's the only way AI is going to help. I mean, otherwise it's going to just guess
Yeah.
what it's going to give. It's like predictive text to some degree.
Yeah.
It may not give you great content. It's going to give you mediocre, average,
Yeah.
very average content. And in today's world, we need much better than stronger than just okay. So the important thing is, what the first step is to have a context. And also the one thing I'll say this too, when you're training the models, especially in the beginning, take a couple of pieces of things that you wrote on your own
Mm,
without the assistance of AI.
yeah.
And then ask the AI to analyze your writing style.
Yeah.
What's the strength, what's the weakness, where do you see, how would you describe this writing?
Yeah.
Then when you sign up for these models, you can often put what I call custom instructions. You take it what it gives you as far as describing your writing. And now you're telling the AI to respond every way in that manner.
Mm,
So now you're getting a much different response than than I would have
yeah.
gotten, because it's only being trained on your information.
Yeah.
Whereas, the AI has been trained on my information. So, we could put, like, you and I could at the same moment put the same prompt into ChatGPT or ask it to do the same thing, and you get a completely different response.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. Like, I feel like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's not, but again, the important thing and the next step, which is very important, is when you get the output or get whatever you're going to create, is to not be tempted to go with the first thing that it gives you. Work with it, workshop it, put your own words, put your own voice into it.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. So you still need to know what you want. You still need to have knowledge yourself because if you don't know yourself, what good content actually looks like, feels like, sounds like, how will you judge the output that the AI gives you? So you still need to know, like, to keep learning yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you have uh, clear criteria and knowledge through which to judge what AI is giving you. And okay, so the other question that I just remembered, because
Hmm.
I can't remember if you, I think we were talking about this before we started recording. But you had mentioned there were like different, obviously there are different AI platforms that one could use. ChatGPT was sort of like, the original one that got
Yes.
famous, but then there's Claude and Gemini and so forth. Do you have, and you were mentioning that, you had developed some preferences.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, they all kind of do the same thing. And like obviously if you keep the human in the loop, principle, everything's gonna be fine. But I felt like sometimes Claude is great at writing.
Mm,
Um, ChatGPT is good for like brainstorming and answering simple questions. Gemini is pretty good too. That's by Google. That's Google's AI. Um, and then one that for those of you that are in a research side, Perplexity is another good one. Um, Now, you're not going to really be going into full conversation with Perplexity, but that would be more like one of the things that I often find with some of the AI generated content is it's not entirely true.
mm, yes.
It may give me a fact or a percentage, but that may not be very true. So what you could then do is use Perplexity, which is only trained on research, and say, put in whatever ChatGPT gave you, a statistic or a framework, whatever it gave you, and say, how accurate is it? And if it's not accurate, can you point me to where, it is where I can find some accurate information?
Mm,
That's where perplexity comes in. So, and always verify. One of the things that I found really shocking, and again, I'm a pro AI person, but one thing that I found very shocking and almost disturbing was where I'm from in New York. There were a couple of lawyers that were put recently under fire because when they were writing their briefs, they used ChatGPT for brainstorming. Again, that's fine. I mean, some people might frown on that. I don't think there's a problem in that. However, always verify. If it tells you a case law, I don't think it takes that much effort to go up in your law library and say, is this a real case? Because what was happening was that wasn't a real case.
yeah,
And these lawyers are now in trouble, and some have been recommended for disbarment. So
yeah,
you always want to be careful. Like, even if it gives me a percentage, I'm like, I need to verify that.
yeah,
Or if
yeah,
it gives me a quote of something like, Socrates once said, I want to verify, is this a record of Socrates actually saying this?
yeah,
Because if it's not, I'm not going to put it in there.
yeah,
Or anybody's even living. I'm like, I want to make sure they actually said that. Because it's going to be, I mean, especially when you start growing a larger following, people might find that out. And that's the one thing you don't want to be doing is putting misleading claims up there.
yeah, exactly. And the thing that can get actually tricky about verification is that, um, I mean, there's like so much content, and a lot of it may actually be accurate, but then here is this inaccuracy in there. And like, again, if I don't know enough myself, I can't even catch that inaccuracy.
Yeah.
So that's why your suggestion for how to use Perplexity to like further check the accuracy of the data, that I thought was a really, really helpful tip.
Hmm.
And I hope we can but at least, after hearing what you have to say, I hope all of us will just be more vigilant and be like more on the lookout for possible
Hmm.
inaccuracies and so forth, and just put in time and effort to like check, double check, verify.
Triple check. Yeah, you need to verify. And yes, it's an extra step. It's a little bit extra work, but it's going to be so much better in the long run because
Yeah,
I wish these lawyers did that. Otherwise, and that would have saved them maybe even their careers.
yeah,
Had they verified. And if you can't verify it, doesn't don't use it. Like, okay, this, or if it gives you a number, you could say approximately this number,
yeah,
rather than because if you come out and say something and because even if I'm putting out a piece of content and it gives me like, oh well, so and so said this, I'm going to verify that they said it online
yeah,
before I do it because I'm, found out sometimes they didn't say that. They may have talked about that theme or something around that, but they never said that quote. And you don't want to quote somebody who never said that.
right. Yeah, and I mean, I'm thinking in the context of, for example, like my work, um, I haven't actually used Chat GPT or AI in this kind of way to produce content
Hmm.
for me, but now I'm like, could it be like making up facts about research in terms of what actually allows people to be happy and so forth. I mean, even if it's not making up stuff, like it could be pulling from less reliable
Hmm.
research studies, or like, because there's so much also, there are like all these like, let's say it goes and pulls some sensational headline about some kind of mental health related claim, but turns out that headline is based on very faulty reasoning, or not an accurate representation of the original research, which
Hmm.
happens all the time. And so now here's AI telling me in a very confident way that according to research, this has been found about how you can be happy, or this is what's better or worse for your mental health, but it could be very inaccurate actually. So again, I would have to know enough to be like, hey, that doesn't sound right. Or
Right.
there's something fishy about that. Let me double triple check that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, your credibility is anyone's credibility is much, and integrity is on the line here.
Yeah,
So it's not that difficult to do. It may take a bit longer, but it's not that difficult to do. And this is why again you really have to go through. Some people will use AI to help them write stuff. Some people use it just as a proofreader or a brainstorm technique. The important thing is you want to be fully involved 100% throughout the process.
yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Thanks again so much, Albert. I have more questions to ask you, but I think I better resist asking you any more because I've taken up a lot of your time, actually more time than I had asked you for.
Well, no, I really appreciate it's been an honor to be here, and I do appreciate you bringing me back on.
Oh, thank you, Albert. Any last words, thoughts?
I would just say, this is a very interesting time we're in, and we kind of mentioned that before we recording. This is a very interesting time. The important thing is to hang in there, and to stay committed to who you are and stay grounded, no matter what happens. And because at the end of the day, you have yourself and the people around you, and that goes to just learning to trust yourself the entire time.
Yeah. Thank you again, Albert. And my last reminder is just please make sure you check the show notes because we will be dropping Albert's links in there so you can connect with him, continue to learn with him, get the help and support that you need whenever you're ready for it. And until we connect next time, I wish you lots and lots of peace and joy.